office left with the write-ins.
Okay.
Right now, it's still not finished.
It's amazing how there's one.
Yesterday was the last day to.
I think it's just gonna stay one, it is what it is.
Yeah.
Now they gotta make it certified official.
When do they do that?
Very soon.
Yeah.
I mean, if not today, then in the beginning of
I
next
thought it was
week.
gonna be, like, they were gonna vote on that and certify that last Tuesday.
The write-ins were up yesterday.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, that
take a
new
look at it.
system is, it's kinda cool. I mean, you can actually, see the thing that
Oh,
somebody.
I'm
really?
gonna have to do this then.
I heard some of them were rather colorful.
A few of them had some nasty language.
Yeah, that's what I heard. No, not mine.
Sometimes you see Mickey Mouse and there's other.
Yeah,
Dogs not
Does it matter which one of these I use?
Speaking about Mickey
How do you
Mouse,
use the
I
PowerPoint one
Oh,
or
yeah.
the PDF?
He and I are supposed to be in another meeting this morning.
You in a minute? Oh, yeah, no, I canceled it.
I did.
I spoke to Tom Boucher late yesterday afternoon. Seems to be coming along real well. That's great. He expects him to still get another stint.
In theory.
But,
I had been talking about it, did you decide that now?
well, like he said, that's
One
what
is
their
good.
plan is. He didn't seem to know when,
Lucky they call it that.
but, well, I'll say.
Pain in the neck.
That's what it was.
We won't hear anything
Not,
about
and
Paul Brown.
not just a literal pain.
No, I
I
haven't.
forgot until last night you were coming to this.
What's that, I'm sorry?
Not just a literal pain in the
No,
neck.
I
It's real pain in the
understand.
neck.
Economic development.
Fred, do you ever hear anything on Paul Brown?
So does it happen to be 8 o'clock?
It's 8:01.
8:01.
Well, when he
The horror.
I've talked to him since then.
Oh, yeah, okay, he's
Yeah.
okay, and then now he just.
Yeah.
Okay.
Last
And let's call the Economic Development Committee meeting to order. Roll call, please.
John Leader,
Here.
Dave Boucher,
Here,
Fred Levering,
Here.
Bill Jenks,
Yeah.
Steve Sher,
Here.
and Greg Porter.
Here. Any public comment at the time? Okay, then we'll move on.
You gotta say it, Jeff. You gotta say it.
Athan is not,
say it.
Athan is not here, but we're all.
Oh, Athan, yeah, Koutsiouroumbas is the good news is I'm Angela and I'm in his place, so it's much easier to say.
I got Angela.
There you go.
Go ahead.
Good morning, I am Angela Athan. I'm from Cresco Labs. We are a marijuana company in Pennsylvania. We also are in 10 additional states. I'm here today we have a new location here in Wyomissing, and I just wanted to come and introduce ourselves, let you guys know what our company's all about, and more importantly, all the things that we do in the communities in which we serve. And it's not just things that we start out and then once we get our dispensary that we leave. These are things that we continue to do with the community well beyond just coming in. So I know they told me I had a half hour. I promised I would keep it to 10 minutes so that I won't bore anybody. And I know when you see a
Start the
PowerPoint,
clock.
please don't fall asleep. There's actually some pictures so you don't have to read along.
Yeah, I was looking for samples.
No sample.
You brought
You
samples.
didn't bring samples along?
I didn't because you would have to go to the Department of Health and ask them for a permission slip. And they're not real big on handing out permission slips.
It's on there.
I will be your Vanna White if you just want.
All
tell
right.
me when to.
It's fantastic. Where's your evening gown?
It's at the dry cleaner.
You can go to the next slide. More importantly is the vision that the company was founded on. And the whole point of Cresco is to normalize and professionalize the industry. There are a lot of stereotypes that still remain when it comes to cannabis, but the fact is that it's a very, very highly regulated, the second most regulated next to insurance in the state of Pennsylvania, which is a very good thing. You can go to the next one. A little bit about, I won't go into everything, but a little bit about Cresco. We were founded in 2013. We now have approximately 4,000 employees, and the 2,700 employees that you see up there on the top left, that was right before we acquired 2 additional companies here in the state of Pennsylvania, so now we'll be at 4,000 employees and counting. We're a seed to sale company. which means we are in the process from the seed to the sale and everything in between. We can also track in our facilities every single seed that went to plant, that went to a product, and it's on the barcode. So when the Department of Health, any other regulator, or anybody else would ask, or there would be a recall, we would be able to do that very, very quickly within about 2 hours to get everything off the shelves that would need to be recalled, because that's our seed to sale process.
So the seed, excuse me, the seed, is that Wernersville or some other place?
Our factory and manufacturing is in Brookville, Pennsylvania. And then we have so far 6 dispensaries in Pennsylvania, 3 in the Pittsburgh area, 2 in Philadelphia, 1 in Wyomissing. And then we will have 14 additional opening up in the next year with the acquisition of the 2 other companies.
Any locally?
1 in Wyomissing.
No, I mean of the 14 or so that.
You mean the grower processor facilities? Or the
You said that
dispensaries.
You're gonna have more locations when you finish acquiring those other companies. Are any of them in this area?
I'm not sure, because Laurel Harvest that we acquired, they had 4 licenses, so those have not been built yet. So we're looking in Delaware County right now for 2 of those. I believe Berks County for an additional one that would be somewhere around Wyomissing. But obviously we have to watch that we're not too close to competitors or too close to ourselves for another location. And then a couple in the Poconos and a couple out in the upper mid.
And is that a state regulation or a business plan proposition that you don't want to be close to your competitors?
Both. You can only be within so many, and there can only be so many within a zone through the Department of Health, where they've set it up into like zones and districts in the state. And there can only be so many licenses within so many areas, and it goes also by population. You can go to the next one. As you can see here, our team, this is the background of much of our team. This is the areas that they came from. So they're very, very highly qualified, extensive experience in everything from marketing to different products, sales, and we really pride ourselves on the diversity that we have within our company. I want to transition into our brand, and our brand is known as Sunnyside, and you'll begin to notice a theme throughout the next couple slides. This is the exterior, so the stereotypes of the old art depot along with the pot shop on the top that nobody talked about, those are long gone. We are in, and you're all laughing because you all know where they were in your area. These are more like the Apple store. When you walk in, they are beautiful. The outside fits in with everybody else. They're not unattractive to the general public. Anybody walking by with children would have no idea what it is if they don't want them to know. Obviously, the shades are pulled and the frosted glass, so you can't see in. But even if you could see in and you opened it up, if you can go to the next slide, this is the entryway where you would come in, somebody would greet you. Everything is locked, and everything inside and out is under 24-hour surveillance. So you can't go into the sales floor unless you've checked in, have an appointment, and also have a medical card. If you don't have a medical card currently in Pennsylvania, they will tell you, our professionals will tell you how to obtain one through the Department of Health, provide you the information that you would need, and then you would be on your own at that point. But you're not allowed to go on the sales floor. In addition, even as an employee, I do not currently have a medical card. I am not allowed to go onto the sales floor anywhere in Pennsylvania. So when I wanted to visit one of our locations and I wanted to see a grower processor and see how it works, I had to go to Michigan and Chicago, Illinois to see it, because the Department of Health doesn't allow you in. In addition, the Department of Health doesn't allow you in or legislators in. Again, you need a permission slip. So we would have, if you would like to tour one of the facilities or you'd like to go to the dispensary without a medical card, as in your role here as counsel, then you would have to let us know. We'd be happy to take you through. There's a process. We let the Department of Health know your name, what date you're going, And then afterwards, we kind of send them a book report on what happened, what was said, and if they'd like, they can pull all of the tapes of you being inside and make sure that what we reported on is in fact what you did while you were inside of our facility. It also protects the security of the product. It protects the security of the product in the safe and on the shelves at all time because it's so highly regulated. So we better make sure that we can account for all of our product and all of our samples at all times. And this is the sales floor. So when you go in, you can see it's kind of like the Apple store. You can go in and pick your product. If you know what it is that you're looking for, what strengths. If you don't, then there's always a professional that will walk you through it every step of the way from the minute you walk in to the minute you leave. When you leave, everything is just like a pharmacy. It is all put into a bag. The bag is stapled shut, and all of the products themselves you cannot see in. So there's no clear containers. So it's just like a pharmacy bottle of something that you would get there.
Do you have a pharmacist on site?
We have, it depends on where the location is. There's a pharmacist on call on one of the sites. During COVID, that kind of changed a little bit. We had one on site. Then they required us to have, the Department of Health required us to have one that was kind of visible to several different locations because we were deemed necessary during the pandemic. But we didn't want to have everybody in, and we had to do curbside, so it was a little bit different. And now there is a pharmacist that is readily available to any patient that walks in any facility at all times.
Because it would help a patient determine what they need, is that correct?
Absolutely. And from different products. In some of our Sunnysides, we carry only our product, and in others, we have other manufacturers' products as well. So just like Advil versus the off-brand versus, where you would walk up to the pharmacist and say, is this the same product? Or what is it that I need? And they'll help you with that.
You do it by appointment?
Yes,
Is this prescribed?
yes.
So you need a doctor's prescription before you can buy the, no?
Well, yeah,
I was
you
just
need your,
responding to his comment about pharmacy on.
right, you would need your card, and then you would also let them know when you got in there what your condition is, if you're treating anxiety versus epilepsy. And then they would work with you to find the best product that met that illness.
So your medical card gets you in, and then your medical card gets you to talk to these folks and then get whatever product they think will help you. Is that the way it works?
Right, and a lot of it is trial and error, just like anything else, where you start low,
Yeah.
go high, try something that, no pun intended, start something that maybe starts you off, trying it this way, a different product might do better.
I wasn't sure how to say it.
Keep in mind, Greg, I mean, you can also get CBD products, which you don't necessarily get the high from at dispensaries.
There's other cannabis products that are available to the general public that aren't from the same, I don't know what you want to call it.
They don't
Right.
have
source.
THC,
of-
they
yeah.
don't have Delta 9.
So, but you don't sell those products, you just sell the ones that you need the medical cards for.
Correct, any of our products that we have in there, you would need a medical card for,
Right.
but you are right that there are some products that don't get you
Right.
what you think of as the original high,
Right, sure.
that are also
Doesn't
sold
have
in the
that chemical
dispensary.
in it that,
Right.
yes, but you don't sell, you don't handle that kind of stuff.
Right, we handle anything that, so we do handle those,
Well,
but you would need the card to go in,
yes.
right,
Okay.
right,
So do you take cash at your location, or will you?
Yes.
Probably in Wyomissing.
Only cash.
yes. Yeah, you can't put it on a credit card at this point right now, and no, health insurance covers marijuana at this time either.
Gotcha.
Does the police department coordinate with?
Yeah, we've already sent our safety plan to both the police department and the fire department here in Wyomissing, so they're all aware. And then we do have the safety and security all of the way because of the large amounts of cash and because of the product itself. So everything is very, very secure where people come in, which is completely separate from where the general public has access to. The trucks pull in, gate closes. So it's almost kind of like going to the treasury. It's very, very secure.
So I guess you have like a drop safe.
Yes.
Gotcha.
So once we approve the zoning changes and all that kind of stuff and everything was well, do the codes come in and out? I mean, are there certain inspections, or there certain, or is it just like any other business?
I mean, for the most part, it's like any other business. There's restrictions in zoning. They can't be located within 1,000 feet of the school. They have to give a copy of their approval from the state, and then they have to give a copy of their approved security plan to the police department. But there's no special
Yeah,
zoning
so
hearing, no special land
council
development.
did their thing, and then it just flows through the normal business process, I guess, after that,
Right.
except with a few things.
Yes.
Go to the next slide. And next one, in Pennsylvania, we have, these are the locations, and obviously the 208 North Park Road in Wyomissing is our newest one. And Ambler will be opening up, within the next month. And then, as I said, these are the ones that are open currently, and with our acquisition, we've acquired one more cultivation center that is already up and running in the Philadelphia area, along with 14 additional dispensaries, some which are already established and others which we just have a license for now through that company, and we'll be building out those across the state as well.
So one thing I don't understand is why are there two of them on Lancaster Avenue in Reading, like where Queen City Diner was? That's one of them, and then there's one right across the street. What sense does that make? Doesn't that go
Well-
against what things you've said, or is that their?
Not necessarily, it would be like the grocery stores, like Giant and Wegmans, or, where they kind of all go in at one spot, or you'll have a Turkey Hill across the street from a Wawa, across the street from a Sheetz. And then it just goes to preference, whether it's brand preference or whether it's the preference of the staff, whatever. How many times have you walked out of one store going, I'll never go back there, the staff was horrible, but I love the product, I'll buy it online. So it kind of comes down to that. Plus, they also like to find a location that, like any other retail, if it were a destination store, you're obviously just not happening by and going in to decide to buy this product. So a destination store, we try to make sure that we're in with the Starbucks, because we're still trying to professionalize, normalize this, so we're really where visibility is high and foot traffic is high as well for any of those that need it, especially in the suburban areas.
So I don't want to put the cart before the horse, but, looking forward, what happens when you get recreational marijuana? Which has got to happen.
I hope so.
Then we will be taking the tour.
Got a straight shooter here.
Our hope is that the legislation that is written, there's currently a piece of legislation introduced by Senator Laughlin and Senator Street, one from Erie and one from Philadelphia. That piece of legislation allows it to be sold in current dispensaries, which we believe makes sense. Why would you have one over there and one over there and additional locations? I would think that it's the same product. There's no difference in product. It's just whether or not you need the medical card to say you have the medical condition. In addition to that, though, there are different strengths, just like a prescription, that you can get that if I don't have a prescription, I can't get. So take the Advil, for example. I can go in and buy over the counter 200 milligrams, but you can go to the pharmacy and get 800 milligrams that I can't get. So there still is going to be a difference in that, but we are hoping that it will be sold in one location and that it will be the exact same. We want them to come into these kinds of facilities, these Apple stores, these nice spa-looking, non-street-like facilities.
So then, if that happens, is that all gonna be cash as well?
Again, we hope not. We are hoping that with the federal banking laws, that will change. That's the holdup there. That has nothing to do with the state. That's the federal banking laws. And if that changes, then we will be able to do it on credit card. And then the other thing that we would hope for eventually at some point is that health insurance would start to recognize this. And that's gonna, I think, be a little bit longer time coming, just because it's so highly regulated and all the hoops it'll have to go through. But also being able to track a credit card, as you know, is easier than tracking cash. So it will be easier to track and trace.
It's really hard to track it if you're a merchant.
Right.
In any event, how about, so I went to college in the late 60s, And I had friends
There you go.
that smoked pot, so
No.
we'll go with that. But, so the pot these days is much stronger, right?
It depends on what you purchase. You can get anything from lowest to highest. You can get in vapes that do not give you the high, but actually help with anxiety. So it's more like taking, a low, if you will. So you can, now there's so many different strands and strains that you can really go in and get what it is that you need for yourself. So it's not kind of one size fits all anymore.
Okay, I think I've said enough.
This is the outside of the facility here in Wyomissing. Over 100 parking spaces, which is shared with the rest. And then the secure locations, 24-hour security both inside and out. And this is the area where you would walk in, as we've kind of already gone through this, where you'd walk in, it's secure. You cannot get onto the sales floor, 24-hour security, greeted by somebody, and they'll walk you through at that point what it is you're looking for, so that they'll put you with the proper staff person inside, employee that is most knowledgeable on the condition that you are trying to treat. And there is our sales floor, nice and bright and sunny as the name says. You can go ahead to the next one. Okay.
Is there a limit on how many people are on the sales floor at a time?
I do not know the answer to that. You mean occupancy? How many?
Yeah,
People-
like, do people have to kind of wait in the lobby till somebody else comes out, or just
They try
like the
to.
grocery store?
Right, no, they try not to let people just in and wander. So you're always matched up with an employee that
Okay.
will walk you through the process. Now, we'll let you browse, like, we're not gonna hover you like you walked into a furniture store and you might be buying a couch. But we try not to let people just wander and aimlessly.
I'm just curious, I saw the 2 chairs in sort of that entry area.
Right.
Like, are people waiting for their turn to go in?
Yeah, and somebody will come out, one of our employees will come out and actually get you and then take you back, so it's very personalized.
Thanks.
Here in Wyomissing, we're gonna have, we currently have 20 full-time employees. The average salary is over $43,000 and a very nice full suite of benefits. Eye, dental, health insurance, short-term, long-term disability, life insurance, paid time off, paid holidays, as well as our company offers 36 hours of volunteer hours. So if there's something that you like to volunteer for, we will pay you to do that. And then in addition to that, I'll get into this in the next slide. You can go ahead and switch it. We do a lot of community service as individual locations. So our home office in Chicago, we'll go out, they'll get a team together and they'll go out and do, picking up trash, whatever it is around. I just participated in Brookville. Our guys went out and cleaned up the rails to trails. And, when they said, come on out, bring your chainsaw, I was like, I'm sorry, what? I thought we were picking up trash. Well, here we were cutting down the brush, to keep the trails clean. And and that was just something that we did on one day. And that's in addition to the 36 hours that they pay you for to go and do volunteer work. It could be at your children's school, it doesn't matter. And they don't ask, so it doesn't matter if it's religious, non-religious. We just did a big one at the animal shelter in Pittsburgh, and they actually did that for 2 days. So they just kind of like switched out and did everything they could, and I think they wound up adopting 6 pets. So if only they would give us time off for adoption of pets, that would be awesome. And some of the things that we have done in Pennsylvania that we have teamed up with, and this is the kinds of things that we plan on doing here in Wyomissing as well. We're hosting our 4th annual coat drive across the state. We've held several expungement events across the state that have been very, very effective. We're active members of several organizations, including here, the Greater Reading Chamber. We host job fairs across the state on a regular basis, and not just those for Cresco. We host job fairs, so we will go out and partner with different communities and ask other retailers to come in and have a job fair, and we will host that. We've facilitated over 126 volunteer partnership activations, food banks, veterans group, domestic violence organizations, animal shelters, women's groups, senior groups, cancer organizations, Adopt a Highway, COVID vaccine clinics, and we do a lot of fundraisers for approved 501c3 charities. One of the biggest ones that we did in both Philadelphia and Pittsburgh and Brookville, we did a backpack drive, and we worked through one of the churches, because we try not to have our brand associated with children in any way, shape, or form. So if there's something where one of the districts came to us and asked us to do a backpack drive for the kids, and we did, I think we had over 6,000 backpacks that were full with school supplies, and then we donated to the church, and the church distributed them throughout the community to those that were in need of those. So again, those are the things that we do in every community we're in and ongoing, not just when we want to come in and say, hey, we're here, and then head out. So I hope you'll be seeing a lot of me. Again, I won't make you say Athan Koutsiouroumbas' last name or spell it, but just so you know, he has a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old, and he prides himself in the fact that by the time they go to kindergarten, they can spell their name properly, their last name.
I don't believe that in 7th grade.
So just a question,
Sure.
is one of our, we have a very successful library program that we maintain the facility, but the library's programs are their own. It's a 501c3. So you would welcome if they would approach you with some program?
Absolutely. In fact, I will leave all of you my cards, and if there's somebody either within this, or if there's an outside partner that is better to partner with the library or the library themselves, I'll reach out to them, they can reach out to me, and I will put them in touch. We have a community integration team in Chicago, and they're the ones that go out into all the states and then foster those relationships and get everything moving. So that's definitely something that we would be interested in doing.
Is that where corporate is, Chicago?
Our corporate's in Chicago, yeah.
Downtown, or,
Yes, right downtown.
because I'll be out there next month, a couple of weeks.
Oh, well, if you are out there and you would like to either go in or see one of the facilities and the grow facilities firsthand, you don't need a permission slip there from their department, so let me know, we'd be happy to. If you're, we just had that with a Pennsylvania senator who said, hey, I'm out here, can somebody take me through? And we were like, yeah, meet us there.
Thank you.
So, yeah.
Well, I'm gonna be in Pittsburgh next week, my daughters are there. I'd love to just take a look around, I mean.
You can't do that in Pittsburgh because it's still in Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania.
And you still need the Department of Health's permission to do it, which we can get for you, but it does take about 6 weeks for us to get it. So if you would like to see either the grow facility.
That's good.
Come to Chicago with me.
There you go.
Background check.
It's a road trip.
Yeah, Russell.
That is all I have for you guys today. We just wanted to come and introduce ourselves, say hello since we're here, and again, if you guys have any other suggestions like that we can partner with, veterans groups, they are a very big supporter of our product, and it has shown to help a lot with the PTSD. So we do really try to do that through the VFWs and those organizations as well. So if you have ideas, we are more than open to all of them.
You said the state limits the number of locations you and your competitors can have within a zone. So the zone that you're in, do you know, are there other permits allowed? What are the number of potential stores within your zone?
I don't know. I can find that out for you, I think. The Department of Health threw a right to know request, because they wouldn't release the information prior to that. They said they didn't know, they couldn't figure it out. We're like, well, you made us apply, and you either granted it or didn't, so that was, I think that was one of the things that was requested in the right to know request, and I think they had to produce at least a map that showed dots as to where licenses were issued. That doesn't necessarily mean that a facility is gonna go up, it just means that the license was issued.
Do you know what your zone is?
I don't,
Doesn't make sense.
don't.
So when
That
we
is
changed
real
the
estate.
zoning, you know, some neighbors had concerns about this, but it seems at your location, it doesn't affect any neighbors. And you
Right.
won't have any issues there.
Right.
So,
Right, and we don't do things like, put up a big pot leaf that's lit up at Christmas time, we don't do things like that would annoy or irritate any neighbors. We really do try to fit in with you know, those areas that we are, and, again, not close to daycares or schools, churches, you know, we keep in mind of those kind of, and also the foot traffic. You know, we wouldn't wanna be right outside of Hershey Park. Although in Pittsburgh, we are right outside of the stadium, and it's one of our best locations, so.
So is our zoning only in a specific area?
We have, it's
So it is controlled in terms of,
250 feet out from the center line of North Park Road,
Okay.
from roughly the north side of the North Park Road Bridge to the 200 block, down to the intersection of North Wyomissing Boulevard.
so if another one would come in, it would have to go in that area,
Yes.
or it would have to be approved into another zoning area.
Which I don't
Yeah.
see happening,
Right,
because that would be a variance from the zoning hearing board, they'd set a precedent,
right.
not gonna happen.
Because if I recall, we had to designate an
Yes,
area
we
to,
did.
for that, yeah, okay.
Both for that and for
I was just
growing.
looking-
Yes,
I was
yeah.
just looking at 10 of them.
Yeah, well, I guess if that's the case, in the state, whatever other regulations come in, like, can you have a place 30 feet away from another one?
Nobody knows.
But
That's
then in
right.
Reading, they're right across the street,
Yeah,
apparently, so.
Well, and that's an interesting question, because Hamid, who owns the Wyomissing Family Restaurant, is under contract to purchase Friendlies, and that was one of his questions, can I open a medical marijuana facility here? And I'm like, per zoning you can, per state laws, I can't answer that question.
And that would also depend on how many licenses were also issued too. So it's kind of like you've got the municipalities versus the Department of Health and issuing them, so it's a little odd, but the good news is you're not gonna be overwhelmed by them. They're fairly controlled by population.
What's something I wanna do? Have, you know, I'll have a hamburger, fries, and a side of hot, please.
Are these
Yeah,
is
no
this like a
beer.
liquor?
Right.
Is this like a liquor license? I know, but I mean, there's only so many available, you have to have, and you have
Yes.
to buy them. Are they
That's
transferable? Can you
changed.
sell one? So can you sell your license to a place to go in someplace else if you wanted to?
We can't just sell one individual license, so it would have to be through a merger and acquisition of a company. We can't just say, we've got 6, we'll sell you 1. That we can't do.
But if you were to sell, so that where the Friendlies is, so if you wanted to move in out of the area could you sell that to the person who owns the Friendlies to start their operation?
And you can't just move wherever you want to. So we couldn't take this Wyomissing license and say, you know what, this facility isn't doing good, we're just gonna move right up the street to a different municipality. In order to relocate from Exeter to Wyomissing, it was about a 1 and 6 month fight with the department, for us to get this location. So
That is true.
it's not an easy, we can't just say,
All right.
let's move that Friendlies down the street.
Okay.
May I ask why you chose Wyomissing?
Well, it was one of the licenses that was issued as far as geographic area that Cresco was granted in our original licensing. And then we looked at population, we looked at foot traffic, we looked at all of those things, and also a town, we always look at something that we can have a good community impact on. And we like the smaller towns, so to speak, as opposed to the huge, large municipality where there's one on every street corner. Especially with like our normalize and professionalize it and get into these different areas and really keep it nice and clean and bright and just really change it. We have a better opportunity to do that than we do in a downtown area that's already kinda, with COVID, a lot of the areas are desolate, nobody came back. So you're kinda asking for a little more, I think, problems, if there's no foot traffic and no people. And we love you guys.
That's not hot speed.
We always
That's right.
we always look for good neighbors.
That's right.
So, does anybody else on committee have or council have any other questions? Hey, thank you very much. It's
You're
been most
welcome.
informative, and we all appreciate it, so now we know more about what's going on. So when
Now
people
you know
ask
where
us
to
what's
go,
going
right?
on, we'll know the answers.
I'll leave you, please.
Publicly held companies?
Yes.
Thank you.
And I left a stack of cards, so you guys are more than welcome to call me. My cell phone's on there. And when you're in Chicago, like I said, if you want to see something or stop by one of the grow facilities, they really are amazing. Not what you think of once you get inside.
Great, thank you.
tell the kids, hey, I'm gonna go see Plattsburgh.
That'll be it.
If you reach, can I have one?
There you go.
Welcome to town.
Thank you.
Take one and pass. That's what they look at.
No, Jim, keep passing.
Just have admired contact for that.
I'm sorry?
You got a lot of
That's a lot.
admirers here. I said, you got a lot of admirers.
Oh, yeah.
And right down the street from
Kinda like the kid going into school with the kid.
Okay, now we'll go into the Doyle Partners part of the presentation.
You're up, TJ.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I don't know if I should say it or so, but I'll follow Angela's lead here. So my name is TJ Doyle. I'm one of the 3 partners of DP Partners that recently put the 220 North Park Road property under agreement from the current owner. My background is that I've been in the real estate development business since the year 2000 when I graduated from Dickinson College. And initially started off in commercial real estate leasing, working for a large private equity-backed redeveloper, I would say. So we focused on buying functionally obsolete real estate from corporate sellers and breathing new life into them, mostly in the office and industrial spaces. Most recently, I joined DP Partners in late 2018. To team up with Jason Dempsey, who is a former colleague. We overlapped for 10 years at the same private equity real estate firm, and Mark Pelchado is the 3rd partner. All 3 of us went to the same high school. Jason and I grew up in the same neighborhood in Philadelphia, so we've known each other nearly our entire lives, and certainly during our professional career. You can go to the next slide. So. We're headquartered in Exton, Pennsylvania right now. We're going to be moving to Malvern, just down the street in the first quarter of next year. But we focus on doing projects in a sort of 1 to 1.5 hour radius of where we're located. Prior to joining up with Jason and Mark, I spent the 24 months prior to that. I was working for a sand mining company that I oversaw the development of 4 new plants, 3 of which were in Texas, 1 in Oklahoma. Each project was about $100 million, so it was $400 million in projects where I led the acquisitions, the entitlements, the design, construction, and then ultimately the startup of those plants, each of which had about 150 employees. And I was on plane, trains, and automobiles for a 2.5 year period. And decided that, the part that I liked best about it was the real estate development aspect, not the operational part, and I certainly didn't like the travel related to it, so decided that I could do that from my own backyard, and that's why I decided to go back into the development business here locally. So, I think everybody's familiar with the site. The site actually does include the Sunnyside building, so there's really three different main parcels. We can jump to the next slide. This is a survey of the site. There's multiple parcels. I labeled A, C, and D because the B parcel, which is just to the left of the A parcel, is not part of the site. But we're here today just to talk about the economics surrounding the development of an apartment complex and some of the challenges that exist with that. So I know some of you may be familiar with the term MRTA, which is a term which essentially stands for negotiating a real estate tax program associated with the development site, such that it makes it financially viable. What I wanted to specifically point out with this slide is that of the 3 parcels that we would be purchasing, A and D, we are not interested in going after alerted for those properties. They're sort of standalone. They have tenants in them for long term, and they would not be part of the redevelopment. It's really focused on parcel C, And, you can see the different real estate tax revenues associated with, each of the taxing authorities on the bottom there. Ultimately, what we would like to do is, discuss what is, a tax burden that is financially viable on a per unit basis as you develop these properties. But we can, jump to the next.
And if you don't, I'll interject here for a second. So TJ and I had 2 meetings, where we've talked rather extensively about their potential redevelopment plan for the site. From a zoning standpoint, there may be some minor tweaks required to the overlay that was just adopted to make this project work for conditional use approval. It's bringing units to the market that we've heard both from, committees, county committees that Fred and I are on, and just what we know locally. Residential units are needed. The medical school's right across the street. This is the type of housing, John Buccino even told us at last month's meeting there's a need for. Part of DP Partners' ability to make this project work is some form of short-term tax abatement. I'm trying to set up a conversation with the Wilson School District as to the possibility of that. I heard a very firm no. Fred and I, Fred and I are, attempting to keep beating that drum and are hopeful with new school board members being seated, their opinion might change to at least have a conversation and hear what the possibilities are. Outside of that, I wanted TJ to come in to kind of, first and foremost, meet the committee. So you're familiar, if we can't get this project off the ground and either zoning tweaks are necessary or, goes through the regular land development approval process, you're just familiar with TJ and DP Partners. I should have told you to lead with TJ and George Haynes caddied back in college, so Equus actually gave DP Partners a glowing recommendation in terms of what we could expect from them. So this is to get TJ familiar with the Economic Development Committee and also the Economic Development Committee familiar not only with the project, but the potential need to push Wilson to reconsider their current opinion of just a flat out no for LERTA.
So is LERTA both school, borough, and county?
The county has a countywide in place already.
Right.
And that's a 10-year program, right? Phased in 10 years?
My understanding is we could set the timing however we like.
I thought it was 10, I thought it was based on your current valuation without improvements.
The one for Wyomissing Square was a 10-year, but it does not have to be
Oh, I
a
thought it was
10-year.
There's some that could be a step up through a 10-year period of time, but basically the school board sets the tone here.
Okay.
If they accept a LERTA or deny a LERTA, it's like dominoes.
And I
They
think
don't go
It's
beyond
one or,
that. Yeah,
it's no, it's all or
School
no.
district
or no.
always sets the,
It's all or no.
yeah,
That's what it is, right?
well,
That's because you get 70%.
And this clearly shows that when you look at the parcels and what's being collected by whom. I think the other important thing that TJ will note is they're not asking for 100% abatement for anything. So the school district would continue to collect moving forward, even if it's for a 1 or 2 year period, at least what they're already collecting today. DP Partners would not be asking, say this gets built next year, so 2002 and 2022, 2023, we're asking to pay you nothing. The next year we'll pay you 15%. They'll continue paying what is already being paid today. It's a question of, as reassessment happens, as the project gets built out and the property is reassessed, what do those future tax payments look like
you
over
have to see
that
the
time
plan,
period?
what's the plan?
Yes.
That's,
So over there at Wilson, what's the problem? Is it that John Moravich, he's the gatekeeper, right?
Well,
Fred,
well, I think that, sorry to, to interject, but I think that when people hear, LERTA, or they hear any sort of tax increment, financing, or local economic revitalization tax assistance, which LERTA, the acronym stands for, they immediately hear zero revenue. And it couldn't be further from the truth. So there's two things that the school district, I would think, would object to. Number one is a reduction in revenues, right? Or not maximizing the potential out of any new building that was built. And number two is how many school-age children would you be adding? Okay, so I want to start with the foundation that Michelle just sort of hammered home the point, which is nobody's asking for, you know, to take a step backwards. So the rates that you see on, you know, on the chart there would stay the same as a foundation, right? And then you would step into it over time based on, you know, what everybody, you know, negotiates for that 10-year period of how do you grow into ultimately paying 100% of the tax load that would exist with the property if the LERD did not exist. So that's number one. Number two, from a you know, a school-age children perspective, we're in the apartment business, and so we have to do these studies frequently where school districts, you know, commonly have this question. And what I can share with you is that very few school-age children are, you know, are populating buildings that are studios, one-bedroom apartments, or, you know, at most here we would envision doing two-bedroom apartments. It's not that they don't exist at all, but studies would show you that you could essentially expect about one school-aged person per 25 residential units that are built in an apartment complex. So, you know, if you had a 100-unit building, you could expect about 4 school-aged children. That varies from, you know, from location to location because the demographics shift and change. But you know, that's where we could do, you know, an independent study that would show that. In fact, one of our active projects that's under construction in Berwyn, Pennsylvania, it's a 67-unit new build project, and our third-party study came up with, I think, 3.8, you know, students in its entirety, and the school district went ahead and did their own, and they came up with 3.1. They actually came up with less students, you know, that were going to be predicted to be in that building itself. So we understand the concerns. We you know, understand the economics, and really we're here just to create that groundswell of people and understanding of folks that you know, have influence in the community to say, no, this is not, nobody's asking to stop paying real estate taxes, and this is not going to be, even if you hit the upper threshold of the number of units in which we envision here, this is not going to, you know, add a major population to the school district itself in terms of school-age children. We can jump to the next slide.
So, so you already have the title of the properties, right?
No, we're in an investigation period, so we have the property under control.
And who owns it? Don
Stephen-
Jacobs?
Stephen Midnight.
Steve Midnight.
Magellan Real Estate,
Gotcha.
who I've also been frequently in conversation with lately. I mean, for understandable reasons. He moved to Florida several years ago. He still owns the property, but most of his interest is not in this area. And he's excited, I think, not only for the project, but to get the sale of the property completed. Your due diligence period, I believe, would have expired the 15th. And some of that, I believe, was due to capital gains taxes and other things that he thought were gonna change that did not. So it sounds like he's now willing to extend that due diligence
Yes.
period to get through this process with the school district.
Yeah, a lot of it was driven by, you know, the concern that capital gains tax was going to increase next year. I think that the visibility that exists today is that likely is not going to be the case. So Mr. Mitnick has been more flexible in terms of the timing that he would allow. And by the way, we were very upfront with him. While he's done a very nice job in keeping the site, you know, tenanted and generating income, that's not the type of, you know, real estate that we invest in and that we're looking to do. We're a multifamily union apartment building developer, and you know, our vision for this site would be to build, you know, three different buildings, you know, and have a mix of studios, 1s and 2 bedrooms, and you know, being in the range of 300 to 400 units. I think it starts to get a little crowded at 400 and trip up some things with respect to the zoning that you know, we want to try to minimize the impacts there. We can jump to the
And
next.
what would the rent be?
So there's, I'm glad you brought that up, because there's several things that we can control when we're going into a project, but there's certain things that we can't, right? And the market is one of them. So market rents are market rents. We have done our study of the surrounding, you know, community and what other buildings are able to charge. There may be a slight premium that we are able to achieve as a result of being the newest product at any given point, but the reality is, you know, the rents are going to be, you know, driven by, you know, by the market forces. And I can't just come in here and say, okay, I'm gonna charge what, people in downtown, Manhattan charge, right? So I would expect that this marketplace could support, roughly a $2 per square foot per month rental rate. So what does that translate into? If you have a one-bedroom apartment that is typically in a new build, it's somewhat formulaic in that you have a 25-foot wide unit that's 30 feet deep for a one bedroom. That works out to approximately 750 square feet. So if you're $2 a square foot per month, you're about $1,500 a month in rent for a one bedroom. You would recognize something slightly less than that in a studio and slightly more than that in a two bedroom. But that's kind of the range of what we would be targeting. And at that rent number, right, we always start with, here's the potential revenue, and now we have to start looking at some of the other, again, that's something we can't control, and then we start to look at, what are the costs to get there. Obviously, it starts with, what are we paying for the site, then, how much in soft costs, which meaning, entitlements, architectural, engineering, things of that nature. Then you get into hard costs of the physical construction for these buildings, the cost of debt, the cost of our equity, meaning the investors that put money into these projects, and then ultimately there's a return threshold of which this project becomes go and no-go. What I can share with you is that a typical apartment model, if we just shrink an entire hundreds of units development down into a singular unit, right? I always use that is our, that's our currency in this case. What, if you, just to make the math a little simpler, I don't know if everybody here is good at math. I majored in physics in college, so I'm very good at math, but this is, I promise, on a third grade level. If you take $1,500 a month in rent, and you multiply that by 12 months, you're at $18,000 in gross revenue that you could, as a landlord, expect to collect out of a singular unit. Above that, tenants typically have an electric bill. And depending on the municipality, sometimes they have water, sometimes the landlord carries the water. But for easy math, you start at $18,000 in gross revenues. You have about a third, sometimes it's, depending on whether the landlord's including heat or not, you have about a third of that revenue is in expenses to the landlord to operate the facility, right? To pay the real estate taxes, to hire the maintenance staff, the common area electric, the snow removal, landscaping, etc. So again, just to keep it easy math, if you take a third of that $18,000 in revenue off the top, you're down to $12,000 in revenue. That typical expense ratio includes somewhere between a $2,000 and $2,500 per unit real estate tax load, okay? Based on what the millage rates that exist for the three taxing authorities here, and our math, and when we look at, even if we just utilized cost as, what the assessed value may come in at, or at least the market value would come in at, and then apply, the common level ratio and run through the millage rates, we end up at about $5,000 per unit in real estate taxes. So here's where this becomes problematic. That revenue number, again, starting at 18,000, we're already down to 12 with a typical real estate tax load. If we put an incremental $2,500 on top of that, right, which is the spread between a typical $2,500 real estate tax load per unit and what the millage rate here would suggest the real estate tax load would become here of $5,000, we're now down under $10,000, per unit in net revenue. That are the funds that we need to put away reserves for future capital enhancements, to pay a mortgage, and to pay investors. And it's not enough to get this project off the ground, just plain and simple. So the only option we have is to figure out how do we work on that real estate tax number, because this is not a problem that's unique to us. Certainly if you're breathing life into new buildings where there's been some conversions that have taken place in the area, you're starting with a leg up because, for the price of buying real estate, you're also getting a building that you have to work with. In this case, we're actually starting in the negative because there's existing buildings that we would have to remove and then, put in all the infrastructure and things, and undergrounds, utilities, sewer, water, etc., to get it to a pad-ready site that we could then go vertical with in new construction. And new construction these days, I'm sure everybody's familiar with watching, commodity prices, whether it's lumber or steel or labor, it's more expensive to build a new building. Now, I would, suggest at the end of the project, in some cases, you have a building that's easier to maintain, that meets, that because you get the design specific to, how these units will be laid out, it's very efficient. It's as energy efficient as possible because it meets all modern building codes, et cetera. But there's an expense, related to that. And, I know it's a difficult sort of, position to be in where, I've probably underwritten a dozen different projects very similar to this. One that I shared with, Michelle was in Phoenixville, which I happen to think Phoenixville is a great, location. It was a friend of mine, a neighbor of mine, who was developing 350 townhouses on the old steel plant there. He had approved another 150, residential units. He brought the project to us. The same math played out. It was about $5,000 a unit in real estate taxes, and the project, we had a walk.
Based on those cost scenarios, you're not looking for a short-term tax relief, you're looking for a long-term tax relief.
So, I think that we could stair step into it over, a 10-year period, that, essentially, if we look at the real estate tax load of 100, North Park, they're paying somewhere in and around the $3,000 per unit. I recognize it's a different school district, there's slightly different millage rates that exist there, but we could probably make something in that neighborhood work.
But if the cost scenario doesn't work now without the tax, why is it gonna work in 5 years from now?
But the tax component is a minor cost of this whole thing.
Well, no, it's
No,
not.
it's
It
not.
sounds like it's a major cost.
Right now, your taxes are, for that side, are about $150,000 a year.
Right.
So, you're saying that this is gonna be $1.5 million a year? I mean,
If
how many
you-
units, you have about 300 units?
If you did 300 units and
Yeah.
you were able to
That's
pay
fine.
$2,500 a
That's-
unit or $3,000 per unit, you could do that math at $750,000 to $900,000, dollars just
Right.
for the school,
Sure.
portion of the
So,
real estate tax.
so I guess my point is, and Keith can take yours, when you're looking at these investments, you have that return in mind, there's a minimum return that you're anticipating, you're using a 5-year, 10-year, 15, what discounted number of years are you guys usually using when you put all this stuff together? Over what period of time?
It's usually over a 10-year, discounted
Okay.
cash flow.
All right.
Mhm. Yeah.
But I guess I don't understand why the raw numbers will change and allow the project to be viable 10 years from now versus today without the tax.
I mean,
It's the loan, what's your financing time?
Well, and aside from whatever, debt or equity costs on it, the idea around this is that the whole area grows, as a result. Number one, rents grow, right? So if you make an assumption of 2.5% or 3% rental rate increases just to keep up with CPI or typical inflation over that 10-year period, that's pretty significant compounding that takes place in rent growth. Number one, first and foremost, we expect that rent growth. Number two, if in researching Berks County over the last 9 years, the common level ratio has moved in favor of property owners over the last 9 years, right? And it continues to go down. So that burden on a per property basis, we would expect it also go down. And this is one of many other developments. Part of the reason that we like this is we see this area as very open, for business and other tenants, similar to the presentation that we saw here earlier, the medical school, all these things that contribute to the economic vitality of the area. Over a 10-year period, it grows in favor of making things work.
So why do you believe that capital gains taxes won't increase going forward?
So, I don't have the crystal ball on that front, but I think that based on, the commentary, that just in the very near term, it was really specific to Mr. Mitnick's motivations of selling the property and getting a transaction done by year end versus allowing it to maybe, move into the first quarter of next year.
Well, that's because George Haynes said the same thing.
yeah, I can tell you, John, that most of the local area, large CPA firms are up to their neck in mergers and acquisitions right now to
That's right.
beat that year-end deadline.
Well, and it's.
They're all busting out, they're all doing the same thing, everybody's trying to sell, but everybody's trying to get away from that supposed tax increase.
Well, and in the last few weeks, I think the commentary has shifted in favor of a realization that likely would not get passed going into next year. And it's all people weighing probability. So I agree with you, there was a tremendous amount of activity that was generated either in mergers and acquisitions or in the sale of real estate in order to do that.
Yeah.
I think that, if Congress or wanted to, they can actually retroactively set it back to a back date, and I think that they were talking about initially a September 15th date, and so it wouldn't have mattered if you got it done by the end of this year anyway, if they backdate it, which seems
Yeah, when they backdate,
crazy.
and that's the other thing, if they backdate it, that means even if you've done it before the end of the year, if they backdate it December 1st, you're stuck.
Right.
You look December 15th, you're included in there.
Right.
I'm an April 30th kind of guy.
Yeah.
So, is your target market part of the medical school, or what?
Absolutely. I mean, that's an
Because,
obvious.
when John Fry, the president of Drexel, was here, he said that, medical students, they just want a place that they can sleep and study,
Mhm.
and when they're not going to school. I mean, I don't know what they can pay or what I think Michelle knows what the stipend they get when they're in medical school is monthly, but I don't
Well,
know.
and-
I mean, I know there's more of a market than that, but
Sure, I think that's a component of the marketplace. If you're talking about adding several hundred units, and by the way, I should mention that this would be a phased project. Nobody would be, dumping 300 plus units on the marketplace all at once. That's why it was split up into 3 different buildings. We would look at building one building, studying what the absorption rate of that first building would be prior to bringing the second building online, and then, potentially a third. So that's just, I think, the smart way to go about it, particularly in the marketplace, just to understand what the demand looks like.
well, I think you're preaching to the choir here now, but how do you get through to Wilson?
Well,
I think maybe I should bring
Go ahead.
everybody up to date with that conversation. First of all, the Wilson School Board did not say no. They have some sort of a finance committee. I've spoken at length with John Rabbit, who's, anybody doesn't know,
I
he's
know
a
you have.
solicitor.
Right.
And I've spoken with him, and he filled me in on what happened, because I, as you might have guessed, unloaded on him when I heard the word no. What the proposal did was go to some sort of a finance group committee. They said no. It hasn't gone to the school board at this point.
And did the
And
makeup of the school board
this-
change, excuse me?
yes, it's a side issue, it's an extraordinary thing, but a write-in campaign in a general election is a really steep climb. It's one thing in a primary, but multiple candidates conducted write-in for the school board, including billboards up here on Penn Avenue, and were successful. In fact, of the candidates that were elected, I think there were 4, maybe 5. The top vote getters were the write-ins. It's amazing, utterly amazing. But nevertheless, those people will be seated in December. School boards are on a little bit different calendar. We see people, beginning of January, they're seated in December. And then they gotta get up to speed and all the rest of that. So that's gonna be a little bit of a process. But in any event, in speaking to John, he told me that he very clearly expressed to that committee the realities of the LERTA, and it's phased, and it's not all, all that stuff that we know and just heard about. I pointed out to him my ongoing grouchiness about when Wyomissing annexed Berkshire Heights and some surrounding farmland, and they've taken advantage of it since 1950 with the mall and all the other commercial office space and so on. And some 2 years ago or something, Michelle, we at this committee were exploring the ideas of some sort of tax help, and the school board pushed back. We've had these reassessments at the mall and things, we're being clobbered, and that's when I lost my mind. I mean, for God's sakes, you've taken advantage of us since 1950 without as much as a thank you note. Don't you want to help us keep that area viable and producing dollars for both us and both of us? And it seemed to make the point that they hadn't. Then we got hit with the pandemic, and the whole thing didn't go any further.
They also had a school board, a quorum of their school board was changing, and they felt the new members that were coming in were not business savvy enough to understand the concept. We were talking to them about tax increment financing. It was right as the medical school was going through land development approval, and the idea was to get a TIF in place to finance some beneficial project, most likely something with State Hill Road, and it was a flat.
The other thing he told me was apparently at some point in the past, relatively recent past, somebody from the Wyomissing school board ran their mouth about going to court to take the area back or something like that. I mean, that's never gonna happen.
Good luck to that.
But that'll never happen. But that really riled the Wilson people that threat was made. And so they are at the moment uncooperative. But John Maravich promised me that he would discuss things and try to start out at the bottom, which would be to arrange a meeting for Michelle as our economic development guru and the equivalent person over in Wilson School District Land Administration to begin the process of having a conversation and then bring some of the others of us in. Initially, Michelle was working on arranging a meeting for a couple of us and a couple of them, and that's when the wheels locked up. But John thinks he'll be able to pull that off. He has not gotten back to me since our exchange of emails and then a rather long conversation on the phone. So I think we've got a fighting chance here to be able to still make sense of this, because the whole thing is just grossly illogical, as we all know, that 104, 134 doesn't go away. I mean, if they turn this thing down and the property just stays the way it is, it could be 10 years if that's what they're getting. So
If it's reassessed.
the idea of having something in process that will continue to benefit us, and then the issue of the number of kids. I mean, we've across the railroad at Wyomissing Square. I went through the same battle back, Dave was part of that back when we went through the approval process for Wyomissing Square. And I actually picked up the phone and called all the surrounding apartment complexes and explained who I was and what I was looking for. And said, okay, how many kids do you got? And there were hardly any in any of the complexes. And this was all the places that we know as apartment complexes in Wyomissing and up into Spring Township. So, and it's turned out to be exactly that way. So, I mean, the most empirical evidence would be how many kids, I know there are a few, are in Wyomissing Square right now. How many are there? Because you could expect to see the same sort of clientele going into these apartments.
And that's something I shared with Fred and TJ. I mean, for those of you that weren't here when I started at the borough in 2008, I cut my teeth doing the rental inspection program. So I've been in every single one of those buildings every other year up until 2015 when crap took over because my job duties changed. I mean, the numbers are not there for school-age children. Do you see infants and toddlers? Yes. Do you see over 18? Sometimes. Like a family, 2 parents that might have a college-age student that comes home during break but does not live there with them. Do you see an abundance of school-age children? No. I want to say for Wyomissing Square, there were probably 10 to 15 for 248 units.
And for Wilson, that's less of an issue than it is for Wyomissing.
And frankly,
with
with
a
the number
smaller, smaller school district.
with the number of tax dollars they're paying, don't they deserve to have some responsibility? So, 15 kids or something like that, I don't think is an unrealistic request, given the big picture. And one of the things that any taxing authority, it's certainly the case with us, is Keith and Steve have done such a good job of projecting into the future and stuff like that. just knowing that, okay, here's what we got, we can count on these things as this where it starts to fade. And the one over at Wyomissing Square, and I don't know yet the details of what you guys are proposing, but that one was, it's stepped up, that it was flat for like 5 years, and then starting the 6th year, it went up by 20%, and then another 20%, and at the end of 10, it was at full measure. So you can also modify those kinds of things. I know that the county commissioners get it and will be very cooperative with us. I think our folks all get it, so it's entirely the school district that has to come to their senses here.
The only thing I could say is, when I got on the school board, you know, it took me about a year to figure out what the hell was going on. And so I think that's one hurdle you guys have, that if there's a big change at the Wilson School Board, you know, some of those new people that, whether they got written in or not,
Learning curve.
there's a learning curve, right?
Yeah.
And you don't want to say anything for the first year, just for the sake of maybe saying something wrong, or you don't agree with, or you don't understand. It's, I don't know, it's a problem.
Well, and we recognize that, and sometimes change is good, sometimes it works the opposite direction. But I want to, just be clear that no formal proposal was made. There was just a proposal to have a discussion similar to the one that we're having today, and the door got slammed. So all we're looking for is to, we understand that there's a process, and nothing like this happens overnight, and quite frankly, it should, in order for it to be looked at responsibly and things to be discussed and for everything to be fair and above board. So all we're asking for is an audience, to make a similar presentation, have a similar discussion, make sure that folks, whether they're new or veterans on the school board, at least have the foundation from which we're trying to start, which is you're not going to lose any tax revenue here. If anything, quite frankly, I agree that you're only accelerating the abilities to generate more revenue off the site and solidifying the surety of those revenues, because each of these buildings is depending on the size, it could be a $20 to $30 million type of project each. So when you talk about those types of numbers, nobody's going to stop paying the real estate taxes and walk away from a property like that, right? So when something like that gets built, a brand new building gets built, you get somewhat of a credit enhancement, if you will, that the real estate taxes are going to be paid.
So Fred, are you the conduit to keep this ball rolling, or what?
Well, I was asked to be in that initial meeting, and you, I guess, I know John.
I know him too.
We serve on a Chamber of Commerce economic outreach thing, and so I knew him well enough that I emailed him succinctly saying what my concern was, and asked to have a chance to talk with him, and he called back same day. And we had that conversation, so he's now pursuing getting that initial step, even kind of a smaller step than what was originally proposed, just to get some basic information out so that everybody knows the same kind of facts, and then asking for the meeting that didn't come off, and then hopefully a full presentation.
I think it makes sense for the two of you, to continue, since you know him, he knows you, and that would only make sense.
Michelle, you still having joint meetings, or?
We just had town again 2 weeks ago. Wilson was not able to attend that meeting because Jeff Simcox, who is typically the person from Wilson that attends, was in Wyoming or Montana hunting for 2 weeks. So it was just West Riding, Wyomissing, and Wyomissing School District. I have a good relationship. Christine Schlossman is their business manager, effectively, and with Jeff and Dr. Fadley, the superintendent. They're not the problem. I had a phone conversation with Dr. Fadley. He gets it. It's the board.
Well, it sounds like it's financial.
Well, it has to be a board.
It's on that.
Well, this would be, it's kind of the equivalent of this proposal coming to this economic development committee and us saying no, and not the council saying, no. That's about where it is. So it's, I mean, you gotta take it seriously, but at this point, I think we gotta let John do his thing. He's their solicitor, has been for a long time, so they have a good deal of trust in him and stuff. So I think we gotta leave it in his hands until he signals that it's now time to move it forward. So, and he understands timelines and all that stuff, so I believe he will get back to us promptly. And given the fact that I'm a salesman in my other life, if I don't hear from him pretty soon, I'm calling him again.
You know, the other aspect, you know, when the timing is right, I guess, one of you two had extended an invitation to them, which they never took advantage of, to attend our economic development meetings.
So for spring,
And they never have. You know, maybe they sit in and hear some of the, you know, some of the issues.
Oh, they'll be interested in potentially attending one about the Merckshire Mall, I guarantee you that. That's the
So
only
will I.
question, that's the only question they ever ask me is, have you heard anything about the mall? Which Wyomissing area school district is actually very interested in knowing as well, but not for their tax base.
Right.
so
It is ludicrous.
you're on this, Fred, right?
I think
You
Fred
want me
and
to
I
go
both
along,
are.
we'll go along, but,
No, it's gotta be the appropriate people, and that's the way it will be, but you gotta start somewhere. So, I mean, at this point, if I don't hear from him, you know, I mean, you got the holiday here and stuff, but I certainly no later than Thanksgiving, and I'm inclined to want to talk to him sooner than that.
well, especially if the new board's seated, so, anyway.
I mean, I
So if
think
you wanna click the next slide, there's at least a zoomed in, so, you know, we can end on just a little bit of detail about how we envision, you know, this site and hopefully again to create, some excitement around it. You know, each of these buildings is purposefully sort of horseshoe shaped. There's an, you know, as I mentioned before, there's a sort of an ideal shape and dimension to a typical one-bedroom apartment that's 25 feet wide and 30 feet deep. If you have what the industry refers to as a double loaded corridor, so a center corridor, and you have apartments on either side, each apartment being 30 feet deep and a corridor being 5-ish feet deep, the ideal building width is 65 feet wide, and that's why it wraps around. We would envision here doing, as the industry refers to, a stick-built over podium, so you would have a concrete and steel podium that would be sort of a covered parking area, so there's some surface parking, some covered parking, and then you would have wood construction above that, you know, approximately 5 stories, which is really about the max height that you can go with stick-built construction, you know, these days. Those sort of courtyard areas in the center of the U's are, you know, elevated, you know, 1 floor up, which would be amenity space for the, you know, for the residents, again, above a parking level. However, in order to sort of conform with some of the zoning requirements, we show the shaded areas on the edges of the buildings there are lobbies. The hashed areas are ground level units as well, so you know, so that you, when you pull into the main corridor there that we envision, you wouldn't be staring at, you know, the underside of a parking deck, you would be looking at units, you know, that made their way all the way down to a sidewalk area and gave it a more welcoming feel. We would, you know, this is, I caution everybody to, you know, that this is really just shapes on a page, as I call it. So this is a very initial study that we did with a land planner and engineer. This has not taken into consideration utility locations, you know, stormwater, you know, management, and calculating exactly how, you know, all that would have to be. And there are, you know, and we try to conform to zoning as much as possible, but as Michelle mentioned, there may be a couple of tweaks or variances that would be required. We can always shrink these buildings, you know, slightly, and, you know, to create, you know, less density. But again, this is a concept here where, you know, we showed having a walking path around the perimeter, the upper left-hand corner where there's a green area up against a steep slope is a dog park or a dog run for, for residents. Really, trying to make it an inviting environment. And, leaving the commercial corridor along North Park Road. So, we just heard a presentation with Sunnyside, the All Electric would not be going anywhere because they both have very long-term leases. The flooring store and the vacuum store in the corner also have, longer-term leases as well as the compound pharmacy. So, in a very later date, maybe that's, the next wave of the redevelopment as those tenants roll and we have opportunities to do things along North Park Road, but really the focus initially would be to likely get building 1, which is the top of the screen, built, leaving the income producing properties that are, on the lower portion of the site, and then eventually clearing those to make way for, buildings 2 and 3. So that is the very high cut, presentation. There are 10,000, literally 10,000 details that would have to get sorted out between sitting here today and, even one of these buildings being built. But this is how things get started, at some point. You have to lay out a vision and then, and then work through all the process.
If this went according to that vision, how many stories do you expect these to be?
So again, the maximum you can do with stick-built construction is about 5 stories. So if you jack the building up onto a podium that's 1 story high, then you have 5 stories above that. I believe zoning, and Michelle can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's 7 stories or 65 feet.
75 feet.
75 feet is the max height. I don't, envision consuming that full height allowance in something like this unless we figured out that from a parking perspective and economically feasible perspective that you could do 2 layers of parking and then start your stick-built construction for the units. But covered parking or structured parking is extremely expensive compared to surface parking. So, we want to maximize the surface parking first because again, that's just economics that would be working against your model to make this thing viable. The more structured parking you're doing, the more costly the project is. And, and then there may be the opportunities to, charge a premium, in rents to folks who have a covered space versus a surface parking space. So these are the balancing act that we have to play with in our assumptions and, as we're in the planning stage.
So this whole site is paved, is that correct? We're
It's impervious.
building
Today, yeah, for all intent purposes, it's about 100% impervious today. As part of any project in Pennsylvania that's over an acre and you're disturbing more than an acre, you file what is referred to as an NPDES permit with the state DEP, which is the National Pollution Elimination Discharge Elimination System. So essentially it's just stormwater management. So the idea would be to make this site self-contained, where all likelihood is today it is 100% not contained, meaning that any raindrop that lands on the site is ultimately making its way, if it doesn't evaporate, is making its way into streams and rivers. When you make a site 100% self-contained, it can handle approximately a 5-inch rainstorm, divert all the stormwater from parking lots, buildings, etc., into cisterns that would allow the water to dissipate over a 72-hour period into the soils to the extent that the soils perk. If anybody's familiar with septic systems, they know what percolation tests are. So that's all part of the studying and the real engineering that would need to be done in order to get a project like this off the ground.
Well, I think I can speak for the whole committee. I wish you the best of luck. We'd love to see something happen there. And I don't know what else we can do. Fred will get on it and see what happens. And Greg's right, it's a school district, it has a hammer.
Yeah, and rightfully so, right? They're the ones who have the most revenue at stake. And so anytime any kind of tax type of deal is made, it requires the cooperation of the school district. This is not a new concept that any of us are unfamiliar with. It just is a matter of gaining the audience. And look, if they say no after we've had a chance to make a presentation and discuss, then we understand that and accept it. It's just it quite frankly is obviously frustrating to not even be able to have the discussion, particularly when, Michelle and anybody else who, we've dealt with in Wyomissing has been arms wide open and, how can we help and what can we do? We like working in areas that are open for business, and it seems to be, the case here. And it's a type of thing that it's a but for, this project can be viable, but for, having some sort of, tax deal that makes it financially viable. And again, I just want to reiterate, this is not unique to DP Partners. It's really, anybody who comes along who's going to do new construction is going to, face the same type of challenges.
Well, some municipalities, from what our solicitor, Chris Hartman, says, they're just not open to it, but we are,
Yeah.
so.
And I don't know if anybody's followed how the city of Philadelphia has handled it. About 20 years ago, they initiated a tax abatement program. Even 20 years later, people still hear tax abatement, they hear zero revenue. But essentially, for any rehab buildings or new construction, as long as your construction dollars spent on the property exceeded what you paid for the property, then your real estate taxes were essentially locked in place for a 10-year period. They've now since changed that, where going into the calendar year next year, that they are stair-stepping it 10% per year, so that by the 10th year you're up to paying 100%. Because there's been some negative headlines, like when Comcast builds a brand new tower, $1 billion building, and it used to be on a parking lot, and their taxes are held flat. But the counter argument to that is that you now have, however many thousands and thousands, 5,000 employees that are paying city wage taxes and spending money in sales tax and parking tax and all the other, economic, enhancements that come as a result of that population now being there. I would tell you that I've done many projects in the city of Philadelphia. One that was very notable really early on in the 10-year tax abatement program that the city of Philadelphia has. We bought the top 400,000 square feet of the former Strawbridge and Clothier headquarters building at 8th and Market Streets in a condo. So when most people hear condo, they think of an apartment unit, but in reality, it's just a way to subdivide real estate. And we took a 1 million square foot building, we bought the top 400,000 square feet of it, redeveloped it into an office space. I was part of that project, and again, if the real estate tax burden existed, the project would not have happened, because the real estate tax side of the equation in office or in a apartment type of rents comes out of the landlord side. It's not just something where it's like an industrial site where the landlord collects the rents and the tenant pays real estate taxes, they pay for the operations of the building, they pay for the utilities of the building, and the landlord really isn't concerned with what the real estate taxes are. The tenant needs to be concerned with it. In the case of apartments, we're collecting the rents, real estate comes out of those rents we collect. In the case of office, the rents we collect, the real estate taxes come out of those rents. So that was one specific project, which was it was a $50 million redevelopment of the top floors of the building. So in addition to there's a pause on the growth of those real estate taxes. However, all the construction jobs that were created, the sales tax, the population that now exists in there does nothing but enhance the area. So to me, I thought, and I still think, that the 10-year tax abatement program in Philadelphia has been one of the major successes in terms of driving development of the number of units that are occurring, and it works all the way from the commercial scale down to the single family residential scale, whether it's a lot or it's a rehab of a row home. The 10-year tax abatement program worked against all of it, and again, mathematically speaking, transfer tax in Philadelphia is pretty onerous. The state has their 1%, Philadelphia has 3% is their transfer tax. So, if you took a vacant lot that was once a burnout shell of a row house and somebody clears it and, they're collecting a couple of $1,000s a year in real estate taxes off of the lot, or maybe even less than that, and somebody builds a house that sells for $500,000, right, and they get $15,000 worth of just transfer tax when that house trades, is pulling forward the equivalent of 7, 8 years worth of real estate taxes day one, right?
Right.
A real estate tax equivalent. Oh, and by the way, the real estate taxes that will be getting paid over that 10-year period are likely, you can count on those revenues because someone who just paid $500,000 for a house is not going to stop paying their real estate taxes, right, and give the house back. So, just something I threw out there and just as a share in case people weren't familiar with what that program looks like. I think that sometimes, most of the time Philadelphia gets a bad rap because of the politics and things that take place. But working, when they do pass certain legislation, certain laws, the city's so big they can't negotiate project by project by project, so they have to do these sort of blanket, programs. And when they work really well. So, just food for thought. It's going to be an issue.
The city of Reading goes up 10% a year until you reach your full reassessment in year number 10.
Right.
So you're paying, each year it incrementally increases by 10% up until the full reassessment. That's what the city of Reading is.
There's one other place in Pennsylvania that has a ridiculous transfer tax in Philadelphia. Reading. Yeah.
5%. Well, the problem with Philadelphia is they already, 500 people got shot there this year and killed. But that has nothing to do with real estate.
Well, they lived somewhere.
Excuse me?
They lived somewhere.
Yeah, right. All right, does anybody else in the committee or the council have any questions? So we can move on here. I gotta blow some leaves
I'm sorry, but I
away.
have to go to work, guys, so,
Same.
actually, I
We're
have
done.
an appointment at Sunnybrook, I'm late. Sunnyside, I'm sorry, Sunnyside, whatever the name.
I appreciate everybody's time today.
Hey, thank you so much.
Yes.
It's
Nice
been
to meet you all.
most enlightening.
Yes.
And
Michelle,
I think we're gonna adjourn the meeting.
thanks, Dave.
All right.
Well, I did
Thanks.
The whole thing.
Thank you.
Here we go, I did say
Okay.
the whole
Appreciate
meeting.
it.
All right.
Hey, John, Fred, I need you guys for about 10 minutes.
I actually need you and
just in time.
Okay, well, I'll make this quick.
But
You want to go to the library?
I really want to go, I just,
I'll let her.
up to my eyeballs and.
I just wanted to give this to you, quick as follow-up. I talked to Steve about it yesterday, he's fine with it, and I didn't tell you he's fine with it.